Zenith is likely the name of Lawman coming up, and why will this champion likely be up next? Well, we've also been dropped all of their cards that are currently in the works. Last time, Inara used to be called Barrier Tank because of the walls, and what happened in the OB44 data mining is we got all of their cards. So Lawman or Zenith now may be very close to coming to the public attention, maybe even going for a back-to-back patch and bringing them out. A lot of people in my comment section were asking me to have another chat about Lawman or Zenith. I thought, yeah, let's just have a look through everything that we now know. That isn't 100% confirmed, it's only juicy speculations at this point, but they have been dragged out of the game files themselves, and pretty much everything beforehand has been either right or they're right, but then some of the data's mixed up and you get some abilities from other champions. There is Oracle as well, but we don't have anything more really on Oracle, so I'm not going to really talk about them, but they're likely the support champion that's going to come in 2 patches. So anyway, we did see some Lawman footage when they accidentally unlocked the characters in OB44's public test server so that you could play them but without any models or animations. One of the abilities was missing, but you can actually see Lawman in work. It's not actually listed in the data mining, but he does 700 damage, but has damage drop off when he's basically got 2 pistols that he's firing off, although they don't seem to have that fast of a firing speed. So likely the 2 pistols are something like a revolver that maybe has quite a bit of recoil that kicks up and then you come back in again and fire off again. But that's a bit of speculation at this point. But they're definitely dual-wielded pistols as that's listed in the data mining. And the first ability is Vengeance, which the last person to kill you is marked. And activating a Q selects another random new player to be marked. So if any of those players that have been marked, either the person that last killed you or the person that you randomly select, if they get a kill streak over 5, which actually I think it means eliminations over 5, then whenever you're 60 feet away from them, then you will be able to sense them. And I think that's going to synergize with the rest of his abilities as we talk through them. The next one is Mark Shot, and this can mark a target for 3.5 seconds. During that time, all of your weapon shots will hit them automatically. There is another little line here, but this might be just some error in the data or something that they're working on or trying out. It says marks an objective that you can auto aim to the objective as possible, which I wonder if there is a way to fire something off or mark just an area on the map that you can fire at no matter what. So maybe if you go around a corner, you mark an area on the point and then you're just firing at the point when you come out. I don't know about that one. It's pretty hard to speculate on it because there's so little given there. But generally, Mark Shot is going to be the flank killer, because a lot of the flankers at the moment have a lot of movement abilities that make them very hard to pin onto and to fire at successfully whilst they're moving around. And especially when we see Androxus with his Darkstalk, which is ridiculous, I may add. The basically you nether step all the time. This will kind of counter that because you'll be able to just lock onto them in the air even if they're dashing about. And I've said before, but I'm not a massive fan of lock-ons, and I think they're probably one of the hardest things to balance in a game, because when you're going into the competitive scene, you can't make the lock-ons better than a person's aim is. So you always have to balance out lock-on characters to be worse than champions that have no lock-on abilities, because then it overrides any sort of aim skill or muscle memory that competitive players have been building up, and I just personally don't like lock-on abilities in FPS games. Now I do see where they're going with this and how it can take out flankers, and it could be sort of the anti-flank, but again, it's going to be something that would be maybe a lot of people that are starting out the game might pick it up and have fun with it, but at the end of the day, it might come out originally overpowered and everyone's using it and you have to have it in the competitive scene, but then they look at it and say, well, actually this can't be as good as the natural aim in the game, and then they have to nerf it. I think this is going to synergize with Vengeance because you'll be able to come around a corner and lock on them straight away and then get all of your fire off. Mark Shot was one of the abilities that wasn't shown on the PTS, so this one wasn't the one that we saw, so we don't really know the cooldown of it. It could be something that's actually not integral to the build, which I hope, in that the main thing about you is sort of just firing off your pistols, getting off that damage, because it is a big damage profile, 700 each shot, and that extra headshot damage as well. It could be that the damage is reduced when there's a Mark Shot on. It doesn't say, but we only have to speculate at this point. That's my opinion anyway on lock-ons mainly. The next one, the movement ability, is called Combat Slide. So you activate it to quickly slide forward in the direction you are facing. It looks a lot like Cassie's roll, and sort of the same distance as well that Cassie's roll does default. And we didn't actually see in the PTS footage whether or not you could fire whilst doing it, but I'm guessing you can. You're going to be like the shooter in the Matrix, or just sort of like the generic shooter in games that are dual-wielding pistols, firing wildly whilst you're sliding around. And I think you're going to play it a lot like you play Cassie, like rolling about, rolling in and out of combat. And in the PTS, there was a 3-second cooldown, which is really low, but whether that will carry on through, I'm not entirely sure. Next up is the ultimate, which is the Law. Basically, you fire your pistols, hitting all targets in the direction you are facing. And basically, it damages all enemies in front of you. And one big thing that seems to have been changed and been added is you execute players with 40% or less health. So anyone that's basically at that sort of health pool is going to be knocked off instantly if they're in your fire zone. I'm guessing that it just basically fires everywhere that you can see, but I'm guessing that walls are going to block it off. And I don't know whether or not the mark shot will affect this fire. And we could see that sort of melting face on the PTS footage as well from Canicox, the Spanish YouTuber that put up their footage in HD. Okay, let's move on to the cards. So the first one is Heroism, and this basically gives Combat Slide 25% attack speed for 2 seconds when you're in Combat Slide. Actually, I think this one must be a legendary card because that would be ridiculous on a normal card. And there's no levels 1, 2, 3, or 4, so I'm guessing that's the first of the legendary cards. And I guess this is just to amp your damage up and sort of makes you better going into somebody's face, basically sliding into them and then firing into them. For that 2 seconds, it would make you rather nasty. So that could be sort of the damage amp card that we're seeing coming out. So the first one we can see that's a normal card is Restock. And this card gives you ammo and eliminations and kills, and level 1, 2, or 3 give basically 1 at each one, so level 1, 1, 2, 3, etc. Personally, I don't know whether you get enough eliminations in a game to justify this and to actually get the ammo after you kill somebody, and especially when you eliminate somebody, you're not necessarily looking to go straight on to the next kill, although that sometimes does happen. So I don't know whether this will actually be that useful, to be honest, and there are other ammo cards later on. So Well Oiled gives you, at each level, reload 5% faster, 10%, 15%, or 20%. So you can actually get Deft Hands 2 straight away with this card. So this one, another damage amp card, or DPS amplification, we might see this one as a pick. Another one that could be a big pickup is Conditioned, and it gives 5, 10, 15, or 20% movement speed base. So like Charlene, really, you can have level 2 of Nimble straight away, and it could give you that edge at chasing people down, and especially as you can lock on and do generally a lot of damage. Getting into people's faces and, just melting them down is quite a big thing. Juke Boots makes it so you can't be slowed more than 60, 50, 40, or 30%. So generally just stopping enemies from slowing you down, but I don't know whether this one will be picked up much either. There just isn't as much impact on the slows yet in the game. We only have really Pip's Flask, and that's quite situational if you are against a Pip, Kinessa's Mines, and Inara's field thing, but the mines aren't too much of a big problem because you get rid of them. Inara's field thing isn't that big, and generally there aren't many slows in the game yet. Commencement, like Cassie's dodge roll cards, increases the distance of that combat slide by 20, 40, 60, or 80%. So like I said before, it looks very much like a Cassie roll, and with this as well, you're going to be able to get that distance. Probably be playing him a lot like Cassie. And actually, coming back to that legendary card, that 25% attack speed for 2 seconds after combat slide, that very much is like Cassie's damage amplification when she's attacking, but it's not a base damage, it's actually DPS. Requip gives 1, 2, 3, 4 ammo after using combat slide. Now this one I think is much more useful, especially if that combat slide is 3 seconds, which I'm very iffy about. That was on the PTS. But basically because you're going to be using combat slide more often, and because you're using it to engage and disengage, you probably will be wanting to get that ammo more effectively by doing this rather than just getting the ammo from getting eliminations. So I think this one could be definitely picked up. The next one is Warrants Out. And this gives you 10, 20, 30, or 40% movement speed after that combat slide ends. It could be a pickup, but when you look at the base 20% movement speed, maybe that'll be a pickup. But then again, if that 3 seconds is right, then maybe the level 2 of this, giving the same level as that other card base, it might be a pickup because you'll be sliding enough to justify getting the card. Okay, this one's pretty ridiculous, and it will really scale with how good you are at aiming. So Wicked Don't Rest makes it so that if you land a headshot, the cooldown on combat slide, or the remaining combat cooldown, is reduced by 25, 50, 75, or 100%. Now again, if that cooldown is not very long, then it might not really matter so much, but generally being able to completely get the combat slide out again, if you get a headshot, that's pretty big, especially if you're getting close to people. That would mean that if you can be a really aggressive Zenith, getting into people's faces, getting those headshots, keeping us sliding around them, just being a nuisance, maybe a bit like Androxus with his Nether Step. Assail gives 8, 16, 24, or 32% movement speed during Pursuit. Now, Pursuit is something that's mentioned but isn't Marks' ability, and I don't really know whether it's definitely going to be in the game. Is this a experimental ability? But this one says you switch to 3P, which is likely third person, but could also be 3 pistols. Who knows? And you begin firing on the enemy that's closest to you for 2.5 seconds. So a bit like Torvald's lock-on on his hyper beam. That could be like an alternate fire mode for Zenith. Maybe the champion has some sort of like dual firing mode that they switch between, and maybe the damage is reduced when you're using this Pursuit. I'm not entirely sure, but it's something to consider, but it isn't listed as one of the abilities at the moment. But this will give movement speed to that, so just basically chasing somebody down and making sure you can't miss, that could be something that he does. Actually, looking further down, these ones are all Pursuit. So Compel actually reduces the cooldown of Pursuit by 1, 2, 3, or 4, so likely an ability. Fortitude gives you 150, 300, 450, or 600 health during Pursuit's duration. Could be a big one, whatever Pursuit is. Hardiness gives you 4, 8, 12, or 16% damage reduction during Pursuit. It's basically making you much harder when you're pursuing somebody. So a Vengeance on the PTS had a 30-second cooldown when you're switching between the targets. So active targets might not be as a big deal, but the cards are, first off, Keen Sight. Increase the range at which your target becomes revealed by 10, 20, 30, or 40 units. Basically, at some point, you're going to be able to see them most of the time wherever you are on the map with the biggest card of this. So that might be one of the big pickups. And the next one, the Hunted, gives you 10, 20, 30, or 40% lifesteal against your Vengeance target. The only problem with this is that it's only going to be on one target that you get the lifesteal. And as we see with the Tyra Vampire loadout, it's not like a huge deal. It's not mega. It is like nice, but it's not mega. So I don't know whether this one will be picked up. Okay, that's pretty much all of the cards and the abilities for the champion and the cards we hadn't heard of before. And this Lawman Pursuit, whether that's like an alternate firing mode, there are those cards for it, or if it's going to replace one of the abilities, I'm not entirely sure because it is in there, but most other champions have 3 abilities, which it already has 3 abilities in Vengeance, Mark Shot, Combat Slide, and then it has the ultimate, the Law, and then the left click, the dual wielded pistols. So whether it's like an alternate fire mode, like an extra ability on top, but that might be something that factors into Zenith. Some sort of speculation on the champion. A lot of people said and thought it was a cowboy, and we're doing all the McCree comparisons. But the thing is, like, they've got double pistols, and they're sliding around while shooting these dual-wielded pistols, and it sort of gives you the impression of sort of like a run-and-gun sort of FPS character, like the typical gunslinger. Like, whether that is actually a cowboy, which would make sense, because a lot of these the names of the cards are things like Warrant, and there's 2 that aren't named yet, but one's Justice is Served. So it would make sense because obviously cowboys took out the warrants on bounties and things like that in the past. But this champion could be like a bounty hunter rather than a cowboy. Think of influencers like Django Fett who use 2 pistols, and that would make sense in sort of all the legal terms of the cards and sort of the justice stuff. And obviously Zenith, the name means above others, so it's usually in connotations with some sort of like some sort of divine right or something like that, which would make sense in the lore as well. So is it a bounty hunter? Is it a cowboy? Or perhaps is it a judge? Is it a gunslinging judge? Like basically goes around in his judge wig and is firing at all of the enemies and enemy paladins in the game. I think we'll just have to see. And because of all these lock-ons, you wonder if there's some sort of like steampunk robot or something rather than just a normal human. Anyway, I still think the same about the lock-ons, like they aren't really my cup of tea, but in general this could be an interesting champion to go up against the sort of movement-based champions at the moment. I wonder if they put in like the Androxus like really big buff and the Buck buff with the leap, thinking of Lawman and how he can just deal with that, and maybe even balancing it slightly around that, but that's a lot of speculation there. Anyway, what does everyone else think about Zenith or Lawman? And what do you think about the cards and everything that has been mined so far? The full post will be below, and also a link to Kanakok's full HD video of the footage of Lawman or Zenith as he was in the PTS without any animations or anything, and some of the abilities missing. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you didn't, well, you can dislike it if you have to. And subscribe for more of my content. Until next time, everybody, Joshino.